Long before the rise of kingdoms, before the first human ever carved a city from stone, before even the gods claimed dominion over the land, the world of Teyvat belonged to something far older. Dragons. Not the wandering beasts that adventurers occasionally encounter in the modern age, but primordial rulers whose authority was woven directly into the fabric of reality itself. In that ancient age, the elements were not merely forces of nature. They were living powers, embodied by the beings who governed them. These entities are known in modern scholarship as the dragon sovereigns. Each sovereign held dominion over one of the elemental forces that shaped the world. Hydro ruled the seas, Pyro governed flame, Anemo commanded the winds, and so on across the 7 elemental domains that define Teyvat's natural laws. But in this primordial era, the dragons were not merely powerful creatures. They were the true rulers of the planet. The skies were unclaimed by celestial thrones. The floating domain now known as Celestia did not yet preside over mortal affairs. Visions had not been granted. Archons had not risen. Even the concept of nations had yet to take form. Instead, the world followed the rhythms of elemental balance. Mountains rose where geo-authority shaped the earth. Storms roared across vast oceans under the influence of hydro and electro powers. Forests grew under ancient energies untouched by the ambitions of civilization. The dragons did not rule through kingdoms or laws as humans would later understand them. Their dominion was more fundamental than that. They were the system. To understand just how dominant these beings once were, we need only look to the rare fragments of their legacy that remain in the modern world. Among the most striking examples is the Hydro Sovereign reborn in human form, known today as Neuvillette. Though he now walks among humans as the Chief Justice of Fontaine, ancient records and recent revelations suggest that Neuvillette is far more than a mere individual blessed with elemental affinity. He is widely believed to be the reincarnation of the Hydro Dragon Sovereign, a being whose authority over water predates even the Archons themselves. This revelation carries enormous implications. If one dragon sovereign still exists, even in reborn form, it means the ancient order of the world was never completely erased. It was merely displaced. Because something did eventually arrive that challenged the dragon's supremacy. And that arrival changed everything. Ancient texts recovered from the ruins of Enkanomiya tell a story that predates all known human civilizations. Hidden beneath layers of myth and heavily suppressed historical records lies the account of a catastrophic conflict that reshaped the planet itself. This story is preserved within a forbidden historical text known as Before Sun and Moon. According to the surviving fragments of this record, the ancient dragon rulers did not fall due to internal collapse or natural decline. They were defeated. Their conqueror was an entity whose origin lies beyond the world itself. This being is known in the ancient records as the Primordial One. The arrival of this mysterious power marked the end of the dragon era. But before we examine that monumental conflict, it is important to understand what the world looked like under draconic rule. Because the Teyvat that exists today is fundamentally different from the one the dragons once governed. The geography of the planet may appear familiar. Vast mountain ranges stretch across continents, oceans divide the great lands, and elemental forces continue to shape the environment. But beneath that familiar surface lies a reality that has been radically altered. Evidence suggests that the original world was not structured according to the same celestial framework that governs modern Teyvat. Today, the heavens appear stable and predictable. The stars move along consistent paths, constellations remain fixed in their patterns, and the sky itself acts almost like a great dome arching above the world. But many scholars now suspect that this sky is not natural. Instead, it may be something constructed. In the ancient era of the dragons, the heavens may have been far more chaotic. The stars might have been real celestial bodies rather than symbolic constellations tied to fate and destiny. If this theory is correct, then the world ruled by the dragons existed under a very different cosmic order. A natural one. An order that would soon be replaced. Because when the Primordial One arrived, it did not simply defeat the dragons. It rebuilt the world. And in doing so, it laid the foundation for everything that would eventually become the modern civilization of Teyvat. But this transformation did not happen peacefully. It began with a war so ancient that only fragments of its memory remain. A war between the original rulers of the world and a god from beyond it. The arrival of the being known as the Primordial One marked the beginning of the first great war in Teyvat's recorded history. At the time, the world was still firmly under the dominion of the dragon sovereigns. Their authority was absolute, their connection to the elements inseparable from the structure of reality itself. Mountains rose, oceans churned, storms gathered, and forests grew according to the will of these ancient rulers. Then something from beyond the world arrived. The ancient text before Sun and Moon describes this event in brief but powerful terms. According to the records preserved within the hidden civilization of Enkanomiya, a celestial being descended upon the world and declared war against the dragons who ruled it. This being is known simply as the Primordial One. Very little is known about its true nature. The text never fully explains where it came from, what kind of existence it belonged to, or why it chose to conquer the dragon-ruled world. What it does tell us is that the Primordial One did not arrive alone. It brought with it immense power and the ability to reshape reality itself. The war that followed was unlike anything that would come later in Teyvat's history. This was not a conflict between armies or nations. It was a cosmic struggle between the fundamental forces that govern the world. On one side stood the dragon sovereigns, embodiments of the elements that had ruled the planet since its earliest days. On the other stood an outsider capable of rewriting the structure of existence. Though the exact details of the war remain lost to time, the outcome is clear. The dragons were defeated, their ancient dominion was shattered, and the Primordial One emerged victorious. But the victory was not simply about conquest. It marked the beginning of a massive transformation. Instead of merely ruling the existing world, the Primordial One began to reconstruct it. The text describes how the victor created heaven and earth for the sake of mankind. This suggests that the world we now know as Teyvat was not simply inherited from the Dragon Age. It was rebuilt according to a new design. This transformation likely reshaped nearly every aspect of the planet. The skies, once natural and possibly chaotic, may have been reorganized into the structured firmament we see today. The stars became fixed constellations tied to destiny. The heavens formed an ordered dome above the world. Many modern scholars now believe that this was the moment when the so-called false sky was created, a constructed firmament designed to regulate the world below. If that theory is correct, it would mean the heavens of Teyvat are not a window into the true universe beyond the planet. Instead, they function more like a controlled boundary, separating the world from whatever lies outside it. This idea has been hinted at multiple times throughout the history of Genshin Impact, and it remains one of the most unsettling implications of the ancient texts. Because if the sky itself was built, it raises an obvious question. What was the Primordial One trying to contain? While the dragons were defeated, they were not completely erased from existence. The legacy of their power continues to echo throughout the world even thousands of years later. One of the clearest examples is the modern presence of Neuvillette. The revelations surrounding his identity suggest that the elemental authorities once held by the dragon sovereigns never fully disappeared. Instead, those powers remain embedded within the world itself, waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge. This means the Primordial One's victory did not permanently eliminate the original rulers of the planet. It merely suppressed them. But the Primordial One did not rule the new world alone. According to ancient records, it created 4 powerful entities to help govern and maintain the cosmic order it had established. These beings would later become known as the 4 Shades. Each shade embodied a different aspect of reality itself, acting as extensions of the Primordial One's authority across the world. While the identities of all 4 remain partially mysterious, one of them has appeared repeatedly in historical records across multiple regions of Teyvat. This figure is known as Ishtaroth, often referred to as the Shade of Time. Worship of Ishtaroth once existed in many ancient civilizations. Temples dedicated to her were discovered in Enkanomiya, and scattered references to her influence appear in the histories of Mondstadt and other early cultures. Her role appears to have involved regulating the flow of time itself, ensuring that the newly created world remained stable. The existence of the Shades suggests that the Primordial One did not merely conquer the world. It established an entire cosmic system designed to control and maintain it. A system in which time, space, life, and death were governed by divine overseers. And within this new order, humanity began to rise. The Primordial One's reconstruction of the world created conditions that allowed human civilization to flourish. The ancient text even suggests that this may have been the entity's ultimate goal, to build a world where humanity could thrive. But even in those early days, this new order was not entirely secure, because somewhere beyond the newly constructed heavens, forces still existed that could challenge the authority of the Primordial One. Ancient records hint that the Dragon War was only the beginning of a far larger cosmic struggle, a struggle that would eventually involve celestial rulers, lunar gods, fallen civilizations, and powers from beyond the world itself. The Dragon Era may have ended with the defeat of the sovereigns, but the consequences of that ancient war would echo throughout every era that followed. And the system created by the Primordial One would eventually give rise to new powers, new mysteries, and new conflicts that continue to shape the fate of Teyvat today. With the defeat of the ancient dragon sovereigns, the world entered a completely new era. The Primordial One now stood as the uncontested ruler of the reconstructed planet. The chaotic elemental dominion that once defined the Dragon Era had been replaced by a carefully structured system, one designed not around dragons or natural forces, but around deliberate control. The ancient records preserved in Before Sun and Moon describe this moment as the true beginning of the world that humanity would eventually inherit. But the Primordial One did not rule alone. Understanding the vast complexity of maintaining an entire planet, the victor of the Dragon War created 4 powerful entities to assist in governing the newly formed world. These beings were not ordinary gods. They were extensions of the Primordial One itself, each tasked with overseeing one of the fundamental aspects of existence. Together, they would later become known as the 4 Shades. While the complete identities of these shades remain one of the deepest mysteries in Teyvat's history, fragments of information have slowly emerged across multiple regions of the world. Among the 4, one figure appears repeatedly in ancient texts and forgotten religious traditions. This entity is Ishtaroth, often described as the Shade of Time. Ishtaroth's presence in the historical record is both rare and fascinating. Unlike many other divine figures, she does not appear frequently in modern worship or official histories. In fact, in several regions her name has been almost entirely erased from cultural memory. But in older civilizations, her influence was undeniable. In the hidden ruins beneath the sea, within the ancient civilization of Enkanomiya, temples dedicated to Ishtaroth once stood as major centers of worship. The people there believed she had the ability to observe the flow of time itself, watching past, present, and future simultaneously. This concept alone suggests that the power of the Shades was vastly different from the authority later held by the Archons. Archons govern elements. Their power influences the world through natural forces such as wind, stone, or lightning. But the Shades appear to govern concepts: time, life, face, death. These are not simple elemental forces. They are the underlying mechanics that make reality possible in the first place. If the Primordial One truly created these entities to help maintain the world, it means the structure of Teyvat operates more like a carefully engineered machine than a naturally evolving planet. Each shade would function like a massive cosmic gear, ensuring that the system continued to operate smoothly. And for a time, that system worked. Human civilization began to spread across the land. With the dragons defeated and the world stabilized under divine supervision, humanity entered what ancient texts describe as an age of prosperity. In many ways, this era may have been the closest thing Teyvat ever experienced to a true golden age. Humans lived under the protection of the Primordial One's divine order. The natural world had been stabilized. Catastrophic elemental disasters were far less common. The heavens followed predictable patterns. Civilization could grow. But even during this early period of peace, the system established by the Primordial One may not have been as stable as it appeared. Because according to several fragments of ancient lore, the Primordial One was not the only powerful entity connected to the heavens. At some point after the reconstruction of the world, another mysterious force entered the story. The records in Before Sun and Moon refer to this entity simply as the Second Who Came. Unlike the Primordial One, almost nothing is known about this figure. The text does not describe its appearance. It does not explain where it came from. It does not even clearly state whether it was an enemy or another cosmic power seeking influence over the world. What it does say is that the arrival of the Second Who Came triggered another massive conflict. A war that once again shook the foundations of the planet. If the Dragon War had been the battle that created the new world, this second conflict threatened to tear that world apart before it could fully stabilize. The exact details of this war remain one of the greatest missing pieces in Teyvat's ancient history. Much of the information appears to have been deliberately suppressed, possibly by the very divine authorities who ultimately emerged victorious. However, the surviving texts hint that the outcome of this battle had profound consequences. The heavens themselves may have been damaged. The structure of the world may have been altered again. And most importantly, the power of the Primordial One may have been challenged in ways that permanently changed the balance of the cosmos. Many scholars now suspect that the scars of this ancient conflict are still visible today in subtle ways. For example, the strange nature of the sky, the rigid patterns of constellations, the mysterious separation between the world of Teyvat and whatever lies beyond its celestial barrier. If the heavens truly function as an artificial system, it is possible that they were reinforced or modified after the war with the Second Who Came. In other words, the sky itself might be part of a defense mechanism, a barrier designed to keep something out, or perhaps to keep something in. While the Primordial One system continued to guide the world forward, the events of this forgotten war may have planted the seeds of many future conflicts. Because if another being once challenged the creator of the world and nearly disrupted the cosmic order, then the possibility of outside interference in Teyvat's history becomes very real. And if the heavens truly conceal the greater universe beyond them, then the story of this world may be far larger than anyone inside it currently understands. The system created by the Primordial One still stands, but its foundations may not be as unshakable as they appear. At some point after the Primordial One established its divine system, the fragile peace of the early world was shattered once again. A second cosmic power arrived. The ancient text before Sun and Moon refers to this entity only as the Second Who Came. Unlike the Primordial One, whose actions shaped the structure of the world, the identity and motives of this second visitor remain deeply mysterious. The text provides only brief fragments about what happened next. But those fragments describe a conflict that may have been even more destructive than the original war against the dragons. Another war began. This was not a war between dragons and gods. Instead, it appears to have been a battle between two immense cosmic authorities competing for control over the world itself. One possibility is that the Second Who Came represented another force from beyond Teyvat, similar to the Primordial One. If that theory is correct, then the world may have been caught in the middle of a much larger struggle between powers that exist outside the planet entirely. Unfortunately, the historical record becomes extremely unclear at this point. Some fragments suggest that the Primordial One fought directly against the new arrival. Other interpretations hint that the two powers may have clashed through their creations rather than confronting each other directly. What we do know is that the consequences of this war were enormous. Entire civilizations were disrupted. The balance of the world changed. And the heavens themselves may have been damaged during the conflict. Some modern theories even suggest that the false sky surrounding Teyvat was reinforced during this period. If the sky truly acts as a kind of barrier or containment system, then the war against the Second Who Came might have been the reason it became necessary. Because whatever happened during that conflict left the world deeply altered. It is also possible that this war is connected to one of the most mysterious elements of Teyvat's ancient cosmology, the three Moon Sisters. According to scattered myths preserved across multiple regions, there was once a time when three lunar deities governed the night sky together. These entities are commonly referred to as the Moon Sisters. While their individual identities remain unclear, the legends describe them as powerful celestial beings who maintained the balance of the heavens. Yet the stories all share the same tragic ending. At some point in ancient history, a catastrophic event occurred among the sisters. The legends say that one of them died, another vanished, and the last descended into madness. Today, only a single moon remains visible in Teyvat's sky. This myth has long been treated as symbolic folklore, but recent discoveries suggest it may contain fragments of real history. If the heavens were damaged during the war with the Second Who Came, the collapse of the Moon Sisters' order could be a lingering consequence of that conflict. In other words, the war between cosmic powers may have permanently destabilized the celestial system itself, and that instability would echo across the ages that followed. Despite the devastation caused by the war, the world did not collapse entirely. The system created by the Primordial One continued to function, at least partially. Human civilization continued to grow. But the divine order was no longer as secure as it once had been. The ancient powers that governed the world had been challenged. The heavens had been shaken, and the long-term stability of the Primordial One's creation had become uncertain. This uncertainty may explain why later eras of Teyvat's history become increasingly turbulent. As time passed, the world saw the rise and fall of powerful civilizations. Some reached incredible heights of technological and magical advancement before disappearing suddenly. Others were destroyed by forces that seemed to come directly from the heavens. Among these later civilizations, one stands above all the others in both its ambition and its tragic fate. A nation that would rise thousands of years after the age of the Primordial One. A civilization that would dare to challenge the divine system itself. That nation was Khaenri'ah. But the story of Khaenri'ah lies far in the future. Before that era arrives, another major chapter of Teyvat's history must unfold. Because as the world continued to develop under the remnants of the Primordial One system, a new group of divine rulers would eventually emerge. These rulers would not be cosmic beings from beyond the world. They would be gods born within it. And their struggle for power would shape the political map of Teyvat as we know it today. This was the era of the Archon War. A brutal age in which countless gods fought to determine who would rule the nations of humanity. The outcome of that conflict would eventually create the system that still governs Teyvat in the modern era. 7 gods. 7 nations. 7 thrones beneath the distant authority of the heavens. But even this system was built upon the unstable foundations left behind by the ancient cosmic wars. And as the story of Teyvat continues to unfold, it becomes increasingly clear that those ancient conflicts were never truly resolved. The echoes of the Primordial One, the Second Who Came, and the fallen celestial order still linger in the shadows of the world today, waiting for the moment when the truth finally comes to light. After the Primordial One defeated the dragon sovereigns and reshaped the world, ruling Teyvat alone would have been impossible. The world had been rebuilt from the ground up. The skies were reorganized, the land stabilized, and the conditions for human civilization established. But maintaining such a system required constant oversight. Reality itself needed administrators. So the Primordial One created 4 powerful entities known as the 4 Shades. These beings were not ordinary gods. They were extensions of the Primordial One's authority, each governing one of the core principles that allowed the world to function. If the Primordial One was the architect of Teyvat, the Shades were the caretakers who ensured the design continued to operate. Each shade appears to have represented a fundamental aspect of existence. Time, life, space, death. These concepts form the backbone of any reality. Without them, the world cannot function in any stable way. Unlike the Archons that would appear much later in history, the Shades were not simply elemental rulers. They existed at a far deeper level of the cosmic hierarchy. Where Archons control elements, the Shades appear to control the rules of reality itself. Among the 4, only one has been clearly identified through historical records. That figure is Ishtaroth, often referred to as the Shade of Time. Ishtaroth's influence appears in multiple ancient civilizations across Teyvat. While she is nearly forgotten in the modern era, older cultures once revered her as a powerful and benevolent deity. The most significant evidence of her worship comes from the ancient civilization of Enkanomiya. Deep beneath the ocean, within the ruins of this lost society, temples were discovered that were dedicated entirely to Ishtaroth. The people there believed she had the ability to observe all moments of time simultaneously. Past, present, future. To them, time was not a straight line but a vast ocean, and Ishtaroth existed above it, capable of watching its currents flow. This belief was not simply religious speculation. Many events recorded in Enkanomiya suggest that Ishtaroth's influence over time may have been very real. Some ancient mechanisms within the ruins appear to manipulate temporal flow, and several inscriptions describe moments where the past and present seem to overlap. This suggests that the power held by the Shades was far beyond the abilities of the later Archons. While Archons can manipulate elemental forces, the Shades appear to operate on a cosmic scale. Time itself was under the authority of one of them. But Ishtaroth was not the only Shade. The identities of the other 3 remain largely unknown, but fragments of lore and recent discoveries have begun to hint at their existence. One of the most intriguing theories involves the concept of life and death. Across Teyvat, there are multiple references to mysterious forces that govern the cycle of existence. Life begins, grows, and eventually ends, Yet the process itself appears to follow rules that no Archon directly controls. Some scholars believe that one of the shades may represent the authority over life itself, overseeing the growth and continuation of living beings. Another shade may represent death, the inevitable conclusion of that cycle. If these theories are correct, then the balance between life and death within Teyvat is not accidental. It is managed by a divine entity that has existed since the very creation of the world. The final shade is perhaps the most mysterious of all. Some theories suggest that this entity governs space, the structure that holds the physical world together. Others believe it may represent fate or destiny, controlling the paths that individuals and civilizations follow through time. Recent revelations throughout Genshin Impact have strengthened these theories by introducing a key idea about the world itself. The stars above Teyvat are not merely distant celestial objects. They are connected to fate. Each constellation represents the destiny of a person or being within the world. These constellations are recorded in the sky, almost like entries in a cosmic archive. If the heavens truly function as a system that records and governs fate, then one of the shades may be responsible for maintaining that structure. In other words, the destiny of every individual in Teyvat may be tied to a system created by the Primordial One and maintained by its shades. This concept becomes even more significant when considering the role of certain individuals known as Descenders. Descenders exist outside the rules of Teyvat's world system. Their fates are not recorded in the sky, and their existence cannot be rewritten by the world's memory structure. In a system governed by cosmic administrators like the Shades, such individuals represent a major anomaly. They are pieces that do not fit within the machine, which raises an important question. If the Shades maintain the structure of the world, what happens when something enters that system from the outside? And more importantly, what happens when the system itself begins to break? Because while the four Shades were created to maintain stability, the history of Teyvat suggests that their control has weakened over time. Civilizations have collapsed. The heavens have shown signs of instability. And in recent events, the sky itself has begun to fracture. These developments suggest that the divine system established by the Primordial One may no longer be functioning as it once did. The caretakers of the world may no longer be fully in control. When the Primordial One created the four Shades, they were meant to serve as the pillars that upheld the structure of reality itself. Each shade represented a fundamental aspect of existence. Together they formed a divine framework that maintained the stability of the world. For a time, that system appears to have worked exactly as intended. The early civilizations of Teyvat existed under the quiet protection of these cosmic overseers. Humanity flourished, the heavens remained stable, and the laws governing the world held firm. But history rarely remains stable forever. At some point in the distant past, the influence of the four Shades began to fade. Ancient civilizations that once worshipped them slowly stopped mentioning them in their records. Their temples fell into ruin. Their names disappeared from common knowledge. Today, most people in Teyvat have never even heard of the Shades. This disappearance is one of the most mysterious developments in the entire cosmology of the world. Because beings that powerful do not simply vanish without leaving a trace. One possible explanation lies in the catastrophic conflict mentioned earlier in ancient records. The war between the Primordial One and the Second who came. If that war truly occurred, then it may have done more than simply damage the heavens. It may have shattered the entire system that the Shades were created to maintain. The four Shades were not independent rulers. Their authority came directly from the Primordial One. If the Primordial One was weakened, defeated, or forced into hiding, then the Shades may have lost the source of their power. Without that connection, their ability to maintain the world structure could have slowly collapsed. There are also signs that the celestial system governing fate and memory may have been altered during this time. One of the clearest examples of the system is Irminsul, the massive world tree that records the memories of everything that happens in Teyvat. Irminsul acts as a kind of global archive. Every event, every person, and every piece of knowledge can be recorded within its branches. When information is removed from Irminsul, the world itself forgets that the erased subject ever existed. Entire histories can disappear. Civilizations can be rewritten. And yet, certain beings exist outside the influence of the system. These individuals are known as Descenders. Descenders originate from beyond the world of Teyvat. Because of this, Their existence cannot be recorded or altered by Irminsul. They stand completely outside the world's memory structure. This raises an intriguing possibility. If Irminsul functions as the record-keeper of the world, then perhaps one of the four shades was responsible for maintaining it. The shade associated with fate or destiny could have been the architect of the system that binds the sky, the stars, and the memories of the world together. If that shade disappeared or lost its power, the stability of that system might begin to weaken. Recent events in the modern era of Genshin Impact suggest that exactly this kind of instability may now be occurring. Several discoveries across Teyvat indicate that the sky itself is not entirely natural. Characters have repeatedly hinted that the stars are connected to fate in a very literal way. Each person's destiny is represented by a constellation recorded in the heavens. But if the heavens are a system designed to track fate, then someone must be maintaining that system. Or at least, someone once did. If that responsibility belonged to one of the shades, then their disappearance could explain why the sky has begun to show signs of damage. Recent revelations have introduced the idea that the sky surrounding Teyvat is not the original sky of the world. Instead, it may function as a kind of barrier or constructed dome, separating the planet from whatever exists beyond it. Some scholars believe this artificial sky was created to stabilize the world after the catastrophic wars of the ancient past. Others believe it may act as a prison, containing the forces within Teyvat so they cannot escape. If either theory is correct, then maintaining that structure would require immense power. Exactly the kind of power the four shades once possessed. But if their influence has faded, then the systems they once controlled may now be slowly breaking down. This idea becomes even more troubling when considering some of the more recent cosmic revelations. Fragments of ancient myth describe the Moon Sisters, celestial beings who once ruled the night sky together. Their story ends in tragedy when a catastrophic event destroyed their harmony, leaving only a single moon remaining in the heavens. For centuries, this story was considered little more than folklore. But new discoveries suggest it may be connected to the larger collapse of the celestial order. If the heavens were once maintained by multiple divine entities, including the four shades and the Moon Sisters, then the destruction of that system could explain why the sky itself now appears fractured. The celestial machine that once governed fate and reality may be falling apart. And if that machine breaks completely, the consequences could reshape the entire world. Because the four shades were not merely symbolic figures. They were structural components of the universe. Time, life, death, and destiny are not optional elements of reality. They are the forces that hold existence together. If the beings responsible for maintaining those forces have vanished, then Teyvat may be approaching a moment of profound transformation. A moment when the old cosmic order finally collapses. And when that happens, the world may be forced to create a new system to replace it. The question is who will control that new system. Will it be the gods who currently rule the nations of Teyvat? Will it be the mysterious powers of the abyss that oppose the heavens? Or will it be individuals who exist outside the system entirely? Individuals like the Traveler. Because as the ancient structures of the world begin to fail, beings who are not bound by those structures may become the most important figures of all. Long before the modern nations of Teyvat existed, before the rise of the Archons, and even before many of the ancient civilizations recorded in surviving ruins, the night sky itself was ruled by celestial beings. These entities were known in ancient mythology as the Three Moon Sisters. Unlike many legends that have faded into pure folklore, the story of the Moon Sisters appears repeatedly across different regions and historical records. Fragments of their myth survive in poetry, ancient inscriptions, and scattered cultural traditions. While the details vary between sources, the central story remains remarkably consistent. There was once a time when three moons shone in the sky above Teyvat. Each moon was associated with a divine sister, a celestial ruler who governed part of the heavens. Together, they maintained balance over the night sky and the flow of fate itself. The sisters are most commonly named Arya, Sonnet, Canon. These names appear in scattered mythological references, suggesting that they were once widely known figures within ancient cosmology. Unlike the Archons who rule nations or the gods who control elements, the Moon Sisters appear to have governed something far more abstract. They ruled the rhythms of the heavens. Ancient descriptions portray them as celestial judges who observed the world from above, watching the movement of time and the unfolding of destiny. Each sister rode across the sky in a silver carriage, guiding the moon through its nightly journey. Their movements were said to determine the flow of time, the patterns of fate, and the harmony between the heavens and the world below. To ancient civilizations, the night sky was not merely a collection of distant stars. It was a living system, and the Moon Sisters were its caretakers. Some scholars believe that the sisters may have been connected to the divine hierarchy created by the Primordial One. If the four shades were responsible for maintaining the fundamental laws of existence, the Moon Sisters may have acted as celestial regulators, ensuring that the movements of the heavens remained synchronized with those laws. In other words, they may have been part of the machinery that governed fate itself. Evidence supporting this theory appears in several pieces of ancient lore that describe the sisters as guardians of time. Certain texts claim that the sisters once took turns overseeing the night sky, each ruling for a set period before passing control to the next. This rotating system suggests a carefully maintained order, almost like a celestial clock. When one sister's watch ended, another would take her place. The sky continued its cycle. Time continued to flow, and the world remained stable. But this delicate balance did not last forever. At some point in the distant past, a catastrophic event occurred within the lunar order. The surviving legends describe this event in vague and symbolic language, but the outcome is always the same. The harmony between the sisters was broken. Some stories claim that one of the sisters betrayed the others. Others suggest that an outside force interfered with their rule. Still others hint that the catastrophe may have been tied to the ancient cosmic war between the Primordial One and the mysterious Second who came. Whatever the cause, the result was devastating. The three sisters turned against one another. A conflict erupted in the heavens. And when the battle ended, the celestial order of the moons had been destroyed. One of the sisters died during the conflict. Another vanished entirely. The last surviving sister descended into madness. From that moment forward, the sky of Teyvat was permanently changed. Where three moons once traveled across the heavens, only one remained. The single moon visible today may be the remnant of that shattered system, a lingering fragment of the ancient celestial order. But the story of the Moon Sisters may carry deeper implications than simple mythology, because their fall could explain one of the most mysterious features of the world: the strange relationship between the sky and fate. Throughout Genshin Impact, the stars are repeatedly described as records of destiny. Each individual in Teyvat has a constellation representing their life and fate within the cosmic system. These constellations are not merely symbolic. They are part of a larger mechanism that appears to govern how events unfold within the world. Astrologers such as Mona Megistus treat the stars as literal guides to the future. By studying their movement, they claim to be able to predict major events before they occur. But if the stars truly record fate, someone must have designed that system, and someone must have maintained it. The Moon Sisters may have played a crucial role in that process. If they once regulated the movement of celestial bodies and the structure of the heavens, then their destruction could have disrupted the entire cosmic framework that governed fate. The sky may have continued functioning after their fall, but it would no longer be perfectly stable. Small fractures may have begun to form within the system. Fractures that would slowly grow larger over thousands of years. Recent discoveries suggest that these cracks may now be becoming visible. Across several regions, characters have begun questioning the nature of the sky itself. Some claim the stars behave strangely. Others hint that the heavens may not be what they appear to be. These suspicions lead to one of the most shocking possibilities in the entire cosmology of Teyvat. The sky above the world may not be real. Instead, it may be an artificial structure created to replace the celestial order that collapsed long ago. If the Moon Sisters once governed the true heavens, their destruction may have forced someone to construct a new sky in order to stabilize the world. A replacement system. A false firmament. And if that is true, then the sky visible above Teyvat today may be hiding a much deeper secret. The fall of the Moon Sisters is one of the oldest tragedies in the mythology of Teyvat. But what makes the story so fascinating is not just the dramatic tale of betrayal or celestial conflict. It is the strange consistency with which this legend appears across different cultures. Civilizations that existed thousands of years apart still preserved fragments of the same story. 3 moons once ruled the night sky. Then something happened, and only one remained. When a myth survives across multiple civilizations, It often suggests that the story is rooted in a real historical event, even if the details have been distorted by time. In the case of the Moon Sisters, the myth may represent a forgotten cosmic catastrophe that permanently altered the structure of the heavens. To understand how significant this event might have been, it helps to look at how the sky functions within the world of Genshin Impact. Unlike in the real world, the stars above Teyvat appear to have a direct connection to the fate of individuals. Each person possesses a constellation recorded in the heavens. These constellations represent more than decorative star patterns. They symbolize the destiny assigned to that individual by the cosmic system governing the world. When astrologers study the sky, they are essentially studying the structure of fate itself. One of the most well-known astrologers in Teyvat, Mona Megistus, frequently explains that the stars contain the answers to many of the world's mysteries. By reading the movements of the constellations, she claims it is possible to glimpse events that have not yet occurred. But if the stars truly contain records of destiny, that raises an important question. Who created this system? And who maintains it? Earlier, we explored the possibility that the four shades established the fundamental rules governing reality. However, maintaining the sky itself may have required a different kind of oversight. The Moon Sisters may have served as the caretakers of the celestial layer of the world. If their role was to regulate the movement of the heavens, they may have ensured that the constellations remained synchronized with the laws of fate. Think of it like a massive cosmic clock. The four shades define the rules of time, life, death, and destiny. The Moon Sisters ensured that the sky reflected those rules accurately. If the stars recorded the destiny of every individual in Teyvat, the moons may have acted as regulators that kept the system functioning properly. But when the lunar order collapsed, the cosmic clock may have been thrown out of alignment. This would explain why the mythology surrounding the sisters describes such catastrophic consequences. When the three moons turned against each other, the sky itself was said to tremble. Ancient poems describe fragments of silver light scattering across the heavens as the sisters fought. Some interpretations suggest that these fragments represent the remnants of the destroyed moons. Others believe they symbolize the breaking of the celestial system that governed fate. Either way, the outcome of the conflict appears to have left the heavens permanently damaged. After the war between the sisters, the sky of Teyvat was never the same again. Only one moon remained. The others were lost. And whatever system once maintained the harmony of the heavens had clearly been disrupted. For thousands of years, this story existed only as myth. But in recent lore discoveries, several details have begun to hint that the legend may reflect something very real. Throughout Teyvat, certain characters have suggested that the sky itself may not be genuine. One of the most intriguing statements comes from Scaramouche, who once made a shocking claim during the events of the story. He stated that the sky of this world is a lie. At the time, the meaning of that statement was unclear. Many assumed it was simply philosophical commentary, but later discoveries added new weight to those words. Ancient records discovered in the ruins of Enkanomiya contain references to a hidden history of the world. These records were preserved in a text known as Before Sun and Moon, a document that reveals fragments of the world's earliest history. According to this text, the sky visible above Teyvat may not be the original sky of the planet. Instead, it may be a constructed firmament designed to hide the truth about the world's past. If the original celestial order collapsed during the conflict of the Moon Sisters, it is possible that someone later attempted to repair the damage. But rather than restoring the original sky, they may have replaced it with an artificial system, a controlled environment, a cosmic illusion. Such a structure would serve several purposes. It could stabilize the broken system of fate. It could prevent dangerous forces from entering or leaving the world. And perhaps most importantly, it could conceal the truth about what happened in the distant past. If the sky truly is artificial, then the story of the Moon Sisters may represent the moment when the original heavens were destroyed. Everything that came afterward may simply be a reconstruction, a carefully designed replacement. And if that is true, it means that the stars above Teyvat might not be the real stars of the universe at all. They could be part of a vast mechanism created to maintain control over the world. This possibility leads directly into one of the most shocking revelations in the entire lore of Teyvat. The idea that the world exists beneath a false sky. A sky designed to hide the truth. A sky that prevents the people of Teyvat from seeing what lies beyond. And if the heavens truly are artificial, then the ancient conflict of the Moon Sisters may not simply be a forgotten myth. It may have been the event that forced the creators of this world to rebuild the sky itself. For most people living in Teyvat, the sky is the most constant thing in their lives. Every night, the same stars appear overhead. The moon follows its familiar path across the heavens. Constellations slowly drift across the firmament as seasons change. To the average citizen of Genshin Impact, the sky is simply part of the natural world. It is beautiful, predictable, eternal. But scattered fragments of ancient knowledge suggest something deeply unsettling. The sky above Teyvat may not be real. This idea first began to gain attention through a mysterious statement made by Scaramouche during an encounter with a traveler. At one point in the story, he delivers a cryptic line that immediately captured the attention of players and lore researchers. The sky is a lie. At the time, this line seemed almost metaphorical. Many assumed it was simply philosophical commentary about the illusions created by the gods. But as more hidden lore surfaced across the world, that statement began to sound less like symbolism and more like a literal warning. Evidence began to emerge that the sky might actually be a constructed system, a massive artificial barrier surrounding the world. To understand where this idea comes from, we need to look at one of the most important historical discoveries ever made in Teyvat. Deep beneath the ocean, below the island nation of Enkanomiya, lies an ancient submerged civilization known as Enkanomiya. This forgotten society preserved records that predate the current world order. Within the ruins of Enkanomiya, scholars discovered an ancient text that contains fragments of the earliest known history of the world. That text is called Before Sun and Moon. The information recorded in this document is considered extremely dangerous. In fact, the ruling powers of Teyvat actively suppress it. According to the text, the history of the world that most people know is incomplete. Entire eras have been erased from memory. The document describes the arrival of a powerful entity known as the Primordial One, who reshaped the world after defeating the ancient dragon sovereigns. It also describes the creation of humanity and the establishment of a divine order that governed the planet. But the most shocking revelation comes from the description of the heavens. According to the ancient records preserved in Enkanomiya, the sky surrounding Teyvat may have been artificially constructed. Instead of an open universe filled with distant stars, the world may exist inside a controlled environment, a sealed system. In other words, the sky above Teyvat may function like a dome, a massive firmament placed over the world. The purpose of this structure is not fully explained in surviving texts, but several possibilities exist. One theory suggests that the firmament was created to stabilize the world after the catastrophic wars of the ancient past. If the conflict between the Primordial One and the mysterious Second who came caused massive damage to reality itself, the creators of the world may have needed to construct a protective barrier to prevent further collapse. Another theory suggests a more unsettling purpose. The artificial sky may exist to hide something. If the true universe beyond Teyvat contains forces or entities that could threaten the stability of the world, sealing the planet beneath a controlled firmament would prevent those dangers from entering. But the barrier would also prevent the inhabitants of Teyvat from seeing what lies beyond it. The sky would become a curtain, a cosmic illusion hiding the truth. If this theory is correct, then the stars visible from the surface may not be the real stars of the universe. They could instead be part of the artificial system maintaining the illusion of a natural sky. This possibility might sound impossible at first, but several elements within the world of Teyvat suggest that the heavens do not behave the way a normal sky should. One of the clearest examples is the strange connection between the stars and the fate of individuals. As we discussed earlier, every person in Teyvat possesses a constellation that represents their destiny. These constellations are not simply symbolic decorations used by astrologers. They appear to be part of an actual cosmic system that tracks the fate of every individual in the world. Astrologers like Mona Megistus study the stars in order to predict the future. But if the stars can record and reveal destiny, then they must be part of a design system. Natural stars drifting through an open universe would not possess that kind of function. This raises an unsettling possibility. The stars above Teyvat may not be celestial bodies at all. They may instead be part of a mechanism designed to monitor the world. A cosmic framework that tracks the fate of everyone living beneath the firmament. If the sky truly is artificial, then someone must have built it, and whoever created it must possess unimaginable power. The most likely candidate is the mysterious celestial authority known as Celestia. Celestia floats high above the world, hidden beyond the clouds. It is believed to be the domain of the gods who oversee the fate of Teyvat. For thousands of years, Celestia has acted as the ultimate authority over the world. Gods who prove themselves worthy may ascend to this divine realm. Civilizations that challenge its rule risk destruction. But despite its importance, almost nothing is known about Celestia itself. Its true nature remains one of the greatest mysteries in the entire story. If the sky surrounding Teyvat really is an artificial structure, Celestia may be the control center that maintains it, a hidden command point overseeing the system that governs the world. But this leads to an even more troubling question. Why would the rulers of the heavens go to such extreme lengths to conceal the truth about the sky? What secret is so dangerous that it must be hidden behind an entire artificial firmament? The answer may lie buried within the lost history of the world. And that history may reveal that the sky is not the only thing that has been rewritten. If the sky above Teyvat is truly artificial, then one question immediately follows. How has this secret remained hidden for so long? Teyvat is a world filled with scholars, historians, astrologers, and explorers. Civilizations have risen and fallen over thousands of years. Entire academies dedicate their existence to studying the laws of nature and the history of the world. Under normal circumstances, a deception on this scale would eventually be uncovered. And yet, the vast majority of people living in Genshin Impact have never even considered the possibility that the sky itself could be false. The reason may lie in one of the most mysterious systems governing the world. A hidden structure capable of rewriting history itself. This structure is known as Irminsul. Irminsul is often described as a massive metaphysical tree that stores the memories of the entire world. Every event that occurs in Teyvat, every person who lives, every civilization that rises and falls, is recorded within its branches. But Irminsul is more than just a cosmic archive. It appears to control how history is remembered. When information is altered within Irminsul, the memories of the world change along with it. Events can be erased. Individuals can be removed from history. Entire civilizations can vanish from collective memory. From the perspective of the people living in Teyvat, it is as if those things never existed at all. This terrifying capability means that the truth about the past can be manipulated. Knowledge that threatens the current world order can be deleted from history entirely. Evidence of forbidden events can simply disappear. And if the sky truly is artificial, it would make sense for those in power to ensure that no one remembers the world that existed before it. We have already seen examples of this process occurring. During the events surrounding the Enkanomiya in Sumeru, the traveler discovers that altering Irminsul can change how history is perceived across the entire world. When certain information was removed from the tree, everyone in Teyvat instantly lost their memories of those events. Only the traveler retained knowledge of what had truly happened. This moment revealed something incredibly important about the structure of reality. The history of Teyvat is not fixed. It can be rewritten. If someone has control over Irminsul, they effectively control the narrative of the world itself. This would make it remarkably easy to hide dangerous truths. For example, if ancient civilizations once discovered the artificial nature of the sky, those discoveries could simply be erased from history. The people who uncovered the truth could vanish from memory. Their writings could disappear. Their warnings could be forgotten. And the illusion would continue uninterrupted. This possibility may explain why so many ancient cultures in Teyvat appear to have disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Throughout the world, ruins exist that hint at powerful civilizations long lost to time. Many of these societies possessed knowledge far beyond what modern scholars understand. Yet their histories are fragmented and incomplete. One of the most striking examples of this phenomenon comes from the civilization of Enkanomiya. Unlike many other ancient cultures, the people of Enkanomiya managed to preserve forbidden records that describe the early history of the world. These records were stored in the text known as Before Sun and Moon. The information contained within this document is considered extremely dangerous by the authorities that rule Teyvat. In fact, historical records suggest that the existence of this book alone was enough to provoke divine punishment. At some point in the past, Celestia declared the knowledge within Before Sun and Moon to be forbidden. The text described events that contradicted the official narrative of the world. It revealed the existence of earlier cosmic conflicts. And most importantly, it hinted at the artificial nature of the heavens. For a ruling power that depends on maintaining control over the narrative of history, such information would be incredibly dangerous. If the people of Teyvat discovered that their sky was an illusion, they might begin questioning everything else they had been told about the gods. The authority of Celestia could collapse. Civilizations might rebel against divine rule. The carefully maintained order of the world could unravel. In other words, the truth about the sky has the potential to destabilize the entire system governing Teyvat, which raises a disturbing possibility. Perhaps the artificial sky is not merely a protective barrier. Perhaps it is also a prison. A sealed environment designed to keep the inhabitants of the world contained within a controlled system. If that is the case, then Teyvat may not simply be a planet within a larger universe. It could be an isolated realm, deliberately separated from whatever lies beyond the firmament. And if the sky truly is a barrier, then the stars above may not represent distant galaxies at all. They may be part of a constructed illusion designed to simulate the appearance of an infinite cosmos. This would mean that everything the people of Teyvat see when they look up at the night sky could be artificial. A projection. A carefully designed deception. If the heavens themselves are fabricated, then the true universe might lie hidden just beyond the barrier. And if someone were able to break through that barrier, they might finally discover what exists outside the world of Teyvat. But that revelation would come with a terrifying consequence. Because if the sky is false, then the entire structure of the world may be built on a lie. When people think about the history of Teyvat, they usually imagine the rise of the Seven Nations, the poetic freedom of Mondstadt, the contracts and commerce of Liyue, the eternity-obsessed islands of Inazuma, the wisdom-seeking scholars of Sumeru, the justice-driven courts of Fontaine, and the newer lands whose stories are still unfolding. But this familiar map hides a deeper truth. The nations that exist today are only the most recent layer of history. Long before these kingdoms were founded, the world was home to civilizations that have almost completely vanished. Their cities lie buried beneath mountains. Their monuments have eroded into unrecognizable ruins. Their stories survive only as fragmented myths and scattered relics. Yet when scholars examine these remnants carefully, a surprising pattern begins to appear. Many of these ancient societies were far more advanced than the cultures that replaced them. Their technology, architecture, and knowledge suggest a level of development that modern Teyvat still struggles to understand. In other words, the world may have experienced multiple cycles of civilization. Entire eras of progress followed by catastrophic collapse. One of the most remarkable examples of such a forgotten civilization lies hidden beneath the ocean near Inazuma. This is the ancient realm of Enkanomiya. Enkanomiya was once a thriving human society that lived beneath the surface of the world after being separated from the main continent during a massive geological upheaval. For generations, the people of Enkanomiya survived in an underground environment illuminated by an artificial sun known as the Dainichi Mikashi. Without access to the natural sky, they developed their own culture, religion, and system of governance. But the most important aspect of Enkanomiya was its dedication to preserving knowledge. Unlike many other ancient civilizations that disappeared without leaving clear records, the scholars of Enkanomiya meticulously documented the history of the world. Their writings included the forbidden text known as Before Sun and Moon, which contained some of the earliest surviving accounts of Teyvat's cosmic origins. Because Enkanomiya remained isolated for so long, it was able to preserve historical information that had been erased elsewhere. This makes it one of the most valuable sources of ancient knowledge in the entire world. But Enkanomiya was not the only lost civilization. Long before humanity built its first kingdoms, another mysterious culture flourished across Teyvat. A civilization that existed so long ago that even its ruins are difficult to identify. This was the civilization of the Celestia. The Celestia appear throughout Teyvat as small glowing spirits that guide travelers toward hidden treasures. Most adventurers view them simply as helpful magical creatures. They drift through ruins, lead explorers to forgotten relics, and then quietly vanish. But ancient records reveal that the Celestia were not always the tiny wandering spirits we see today. They were once a powerful and elegant race. According to ancient lore, The Celestia possessed immense knowledge of the world and maintained close relationships with humanity. They acted as guides and mentors, helping early human societies develop their cultures and civilizations. Stories describe them as graceful beings who lived in magnificent palaces and traveled across the world freely. Some legends even suggest that the Celestia had a direct connection to the celestial powers governing Teyvat. But at some point in the distant past, something terrible happened. The Celestia civilization collapsed. Their cities vanished. Their people were reduced to the fragile spirits that now wander the ruins of the world. The exact cause of this fall remains one of the greatest mysteries in the lore of Genshin Impact. However, ancient legends provide a haunting clue. According to myth, a Celestia once fell in love with a traveler from afar. This forbidden relationship angered the heavenly powers that ruled the world. As punishment, the Celestia were cursed. Their civilization was destroyed, and their people were stripped of their former forms. The radiant beings who once guided humanity became the wandering lights that now drift silently through ancient ruins. At first glance, this story sounds like a simple fairy tale meant to explain the existence of the Celestia spirits. But when we consider the broader context of Teyvat's history, the story becomes much more intriguing. If Celestia truly enforces strict control over the world, it is possible that the Celestia were punished for violating some fundamental rule of the cosmic order. Perhaps they discovered forbidden knowledge. Perhaps they attempted to challenge the authority of the heavens. Or perhaps their connection with outsiders threatened the carefully maintained isolation of the world. Whatever the reason, their downfall appears to have been both sudden and devastating. The once great civilization of the Celestia disappeared almost entirely from the historical record. Only their ruins remain. And the tiny glowing spirits that roam those ruins serve as the final reminder of a culture that once shaped the world. When we combine the story of the Celestia with the discoveries made in Enkanomiya, a larger picture begins to form. Teyvat is not simply a world that developed gradually over time. It is a world built on the ruins of multiple lost civilizations. Each of these societies rose to great heights of knowledge and power, and each of them eventually fell. The reasons for these collapses are rarely clear, but many of them share a common theme. They appear to have drawn the attention of the gods. And when a civilization grows too powerful, too curious, or too defiant, divine punishment often follows. When exploring the ruins scattered across Teyvat, a strange realization slowly emerges. The ancient civilizations that once existed here were not isolated anomalies. They were part of a much larger pattern. Across deserts, mountains, islands, and underground caverns, explorers continue to discover remnants of cultures that vanished long before the current nations were established. Each of these societies developed unique technologies, philosophies, and structures, and yet almost all of them share the same fate. They disappeared. To understand why this keeps happening, we need to examine a few of the most significant ancient cultures that once shaped the world. One of the most technologically advanced civilizations ever discovered existed in the desert region of Sumeru. Long before the desert became a barren wasteland, it was home to a powerful kingdom ruled by a legendary figure known as King Deshret. King Deshret, sometimes called the Scarlet King, was not simply a ruler. He was a god, and his civilization pushed the boundaries of knowledge further than almost any other society in recorded history. Deshret's people developed complex mechanical systems, massive architectural projects, and advanced forms of energy manipulation. Even today, thousands of years after their fall, travelers can still find enormous ruins scattered across the desert. Colossal pyramids, mechanical guardians, ancient control systems that continue operating despite the passage of centuries. These remnants suggest that Deshret's civilization had reached a level of technological sophistication that rivals modern research institutions. But the most fascinating aspect of Deshret's kingdom was its obsession with forbidden knowledge. Unlike many other gods who served the celestial order, Deshret actively sought to understand the deeper truths of the universe. He investigated the origins of the world. He searched for knowledge that existed beyond the limits imposed by the heavenly authorities. Some ancient texts even suggest that Deshret attempted to uncover secrets related to the artificial structure of the sky itself. This relentless pursuit of knowledge ultimately led to disaster. According to historical accounts preserved in Sumeru, King Deshret came into contact with a mysterious and dangerous force known as forbidden knowledge. This power was not native to Teyvat. It appeared to originate from somewhere outside the world. Exposure to this knowledge caused devastating consequences. The minds of Dishret's people began to collapse under the weight of incomprehensible information. Reality itself seemed to distort around the spreading corruption. Eventually, the Scarlet King made a tragic decision. In order to prevent the destruction of the world, Dishret sacrificed himself. His civilization collapsed soon after. The once great desert kingdom turned into ruins buried beneath endless sands. Today, the desert region of Sumeru stands as a silent monument to the dangers of pursuing knowledge that the world was never meant to understand. But the fall of Dishret's kingdom was not the only example of an advanced civilization being destroyed. Across Teyvat, explorers continue to uncover relics of ancient technological systems that seem far more advanced than the societies that built them. One particularly mysterious set of relics comes from the massive mechanical constructs known as ruin machines. These towering automatons can be found scattered throughout the world. Some lie dormant in forgotten ruins. Others remain active, defending ancient structures that no longer exist. The origin of these machines traces back to a civilization that rejected the authority of the gods entirely. This civilization was known as Khaenri'ah. Unlike most nations in Teyvat, Khaenri'ah did not worship the gods of Celestia. Instead, it relied on human ingenuity, alchemy, and technology to build its power. Its people created artificial life forms, advanced mechanical armies, and powerful alchemical systems capable of rivaling divine abilities. For a time, Khaenri'ah flourished. It became one of the most advanced civilizations in the world. But just like the Celestia civilization and the kingdom of King Dishret, Khaenri'ah eventually drew the attention of the heavens. And when it did, the consequences were catastrophic. We will explore the destruction of Khaenri'ah in detail later in the timeline. But its story reveals something important about the structure of Teyvat's history. Time and time again, civilizations that grow too powerful or too independent eventually face overwhelming punishment. The Celestia civilization vanished after defying the heavens. The kingdom of King Dishret collapsed after pursuing forbidden knowledge. And Khaenri'ah would eventually suffer one of the most devastating disasters in the history of the world. This pattern raises a disturbing question. Is the destruction of advanced civilizations simply a tragic coincidence? Or is it part of a deliberate system of control? If the rulers of Celestia truly oversee the fate of the world, then they may also decide which civilizations are allowed to exist. Societies that remain obedient and stable are permitted to thrive. But civilizations that challenge the established order risk annihilation. This possibility suggests that Teyvat's history may not be a natural progression of cultural development. Instead, it may be a carefully managed cycle. Civilizations rise. They grow stronger. They begin asking dangerous questions. And eventually, they disappear. Their ruins become warnings to future generations. Silent reminders that the gods are always watching. But history also shows that curiosity can never be completely suppressed. No matter how many civilizations fall, new societies eventually rise to take their place. New scholars search for lost knowledge. New explorers uncover ancient ruins. And eventually, someone always begins asking the same forbidden question. What truths are the gods trying to hide? Thousands of years after the earliest civilizations rose and fell, Teyvat entered one of the most violent periods in its history. An era defined not by the rise of humanity, but by a brutal struggle between the gods themselves. This conflict would become known as the Archon War. To understand why this war happened, we first need to understand the world that existed before it began. Long before the modern nations of Teyvat were established, the world was not governed by a small group of archons. Instead, it was filled with countless gods. Some ruled mountains. Some governed rivers and oceans. Others controlled storms, forests, or entire regions of land. These deities varied widely in power and personality. Some protected the people who lived within their territories. Others were indifferent. And a few were openly destructive. Humanity lived beneath a chaotic patchwork of divine rulers. There was no unified system governing the world. Instead, countless gods competed for influence and territory. At some point in the distant past, the celestial authority known as Celestia decided to change the system. Rather than allowing an endless number of gods to rule the world, Celestia established a new order. Only 7 gods would be allowed to hold ultimate authority. Each of these chosen rulers would govern one region of Teyvat and embody a specific divine ideal. These rulers would become known as the 7 Archons. But this new system could not be implemented peacefully. There were far too many gods already claiming power across the world. If only 7 could remain, then the others would have to fall. And so the Archon War began. Across Teyvat, gods turned against one another in a massive struggle for survival. Divine battles reshaped entire landscapes. Mountains were shattered. Seas were divided. Cities vanished beneath waves of elemental destruction. Human civilizations caught in the middle of these conflicts often suffered the worst consequences. For mortals, the Archon War was a terrifying era where the forces of nature themselves seemed to be at war. But from Celestia's perspective, the war had a clear purpose. It would determine which gods were worthy of ruling the world. Only the strongest, most capable deities would survive. Over time, the countless gods that once populated Teyvat were gradually eliminated. Some were defeated in battle. Others disappeared from history. Many simply faded away as their followers were lost. After centuries of conflict, only a handful of powerful gods remained. From these survivors, the 7 Archons eventually emerged. Each Archon would rule a specific region and embody a guiding principle that defined their nation. One of the earliest Archons to rise during this chaotic period was Barbatos. Today, Barbatos is better known by his mortal name, Venti. Before the Archon War, Barbatos was not a powerful god. He began as a simple wind spirit, a small elemental being with little influence over the world. But during the war, Barbatos formed a bond with a group of humans who were struggling under the oppressive rule of a tyrant god. That tyrant was known as Decarabian, the self-proclaimed god of storms. Decarabian ruled over the region that would eventually become Mondstadt. Believing that the outside world was too dangerous for humans, Decarabian imprisoned his people within massive walls of storm winds. The inhabitants of Mondstadt lived their lives trapped inside this eternal hurricane. But eventually, the people of the region rebelled. With the help of Barbatos and several powerful allies, they rose up against Decarabian's rule. The rebellion succeeded. Decarabian was defeated, and the wind spirit who helped the people gain their freedom ascended as the Enemo Archon. Rather than ruling as a traditional monarch, Barbatos chose a different path. He gave the people of Mondstadt complete freedom to govern themselves. This decision shaped the identity of Mondstadt for thousands of years. Even today, the nation is known as the City of Freedom. Meanwhile, in another region of Teyvat, a far older and more powerful god was also rising to prominence. This god was Morax. Morax, now known to mortals as Vongli, would eventually become the Geo-Archon and the ruler of Liyue. Unlike Barbatos, Morax was already a formidable deity before the Archon War began. He was one of the oldest surviving gods in the world. During the war, Morax led powerful armies of Adepti and humans in a long struggle to secure his territory. Many other gods attempted to claim the region that would become Liyue. But one by one, they were defeated. Through strength, strategy, and countless battles, Morax emerged as the undisputed ruler of the land. By the end of the Archon War, he had become one of the 7. Together with the other Archons who would rise across Teyvat, these gods would establish the system that still governs the world today. But while the Archon War created a new order, it also left deep scars across the planet. The destruction caused by centuries of divine conflict reshaped landscapes and wiped entire civilizations from existence. And even though the war eventually ended, the consequences of those battles would echo through history for thousands of years. By the time the Archon War finally began to settle, Teyvat had been transformed. Entire regions had been reshaped by divine combat. Gods who had once ruled mountains, rivers, forests, and skies had vanished. And from the ashes of that chaos, 7 victorious rulers remained. These were the 7 Archons. Each Archon represented a specific element and ideal, and each would govern a region of the world under the watchful authority of Celestia. This new system brought a form of stability that Teyvat had never experienced before. But it also created a new hierarchy. The Archons were powerful, but they were not the ultimate authority. Above them, Celestia still watched, and the rules imposed by the heavens remained absolute. Among the surviving Archons was the Electro-Archon who would rule the islands of Inazuma. This ruler was Raiden Ei. Unlike Barbatos and Morix, Raiden Ei's story during the Archon War is tied closely to the concept of loss. In the early days of Inazuma's history, the Electro-Archon was actually a pair of twin gods. Ei and her sister Raiden Makoto ruled together. Makoto served as the public leader and the original Electro-Archon. Ei acted as her protector, a warrior who fought the brutal battles necessary to secure their nation. Together, the twins defended Inazuma during the chaos of the Archon War. But over time, tragedy struck. Makoto eventually perished during later conflicts, leaving Ei to rule alone. This loss would deeply shape Ei's philosophy and eventually lead to her pursuit of eternity. But during the era of the Archon War itself, the twins played a crucial role in establishing Inazuma as one of the 7 nations. Across Teyvat, similar stories unfolded as the remaining Archons secured their territories. Each region developed its own culture, traditions, and governing systems. But the influence of the Archons remained central to every nation's identity. In Mondstadt, the Anemo Archon Venti chose not to rule directly. Instead, he allowed the people to build a society based on freedom and self-governance. In Liyue, the Geo Archon Zhongli created a system centered on contracts, trade, and mutual agreements. Meanwhile, in Inazuma, the rule of Raiden Ei would eventually evolve into a strict pursuit of eternal stability. Other Archons governed regions that would later become known as Sumeru, Fontaine, Natlan, and Snezhnaya. Together, these 7 nations formed the political and divine structure that still defines the world today. But the end of the Archon War did not mean that peace had truly arrived. The war may have established the 7 Archons, but it also left a lingering question. What exactly was the relationship between the Archons and Celestia? Officially, the Archons ruled their nations. They were worshipped by their people. They commanded immense elemental power. But there were limits to their authority. Celestia still stood above them. From the floating realm high in the sky, the heavenly rulers could intervene in the affairs of Teyvat whenever they deemed it necessary. Historical records suggest that Celestia rarely acts directly. Instead, it allows the Archons to govern their regions independently. But when a civilization threatens the balance of the world, Celestia has demonstrated that it is willing to intervene with devastating force. This pattern can be seen in several major historical events. Civilizations that grow too powerful or too independent often meet catastrophic ends. The destruction of ancient societies throughout Teyvat suggests that Celestia maintains strict control over the world's development. In this system, the Archons function as intermediaries. They govern the people of Teyvat, but they must still operate within the boundaries imposed by the heavens. Some Archons appear comfortable with this arrangement. Others seem far more uneasy. Over thousands of years, the relationship between the Archons and Celestia has become increasingly complicated. Some Archons have begun to question the authority of the heavens. Others have distanced themselves from direct involvement in human affairs. And a few appear to be preparing for conflicts that may one day challenge the celestial order itself. One of the most striking examples of this shift can be seen in the actions of the Cryo-Archon. The ruler of Snezhnaya, known as the Tsaritsa, has begun gathering the divine powers of the other Archons. Through her organization, the Fatui, she seeks to collect the Archon's Gnosis, the symbols of their divine authority granted by Celestia. Her ultimate goal remains unknown, but many believe that the Tsaritsa intends to challenge the heavens themselves. If that is true, then the system created after the Archon War may eventually collapse. The gods who once fought to claim their positions may one day fight again. And this time, the conflict may not be limited to the surface of Teyvat. Because if the authority of Celestia is truly threatened, then the heavens themselves may descend once more. While the 7 nations slowly formed under the rule of the Archons, another civilization was rising in secret. A nation unlike any other in the world. A civilization that rejected the authority of the gods completely. This was the kingdom of Khaenri'ah. Unlike the other nations of Teyvat, Khaenri'ah did not exist on the surface of the world. It was an underground kingdom, hidden deep beneath the continent. Most people living in Teyvat had never even heard its name, and those who had rarely understood the full scope of its power. What made Khaenri'ah truly unique was its relationship with the divine. Every other nation in Teyvat was built around an Archon. Mondstadt followed the ideals of freedom inspired by the Anemo Archon. Liyue developed under the contracts established by the Geo Archon. Inazuma pursued eternity under the rule of the Electro Archon. Each nation accepted the authority of the gods. But Khaenri'ah chose a different path. It had no Archon, no divine protector, no connection to Celestia. Instead, the people of Khaenri'ah relied entirely on human ingenuity. Their civilization was built on science, engineering, and a powerful branch of study known as alchemy. Over time, Khaenri'ah became one of the most technologically advanced societies the world had ever seen. Their scholars developed complex machinery capable of operating independently for centuries. Their engineers constructed enormous mechanical guardians to defend their cities. These constructs would later become known throughout Teyvat as ruin machines. Even thousands of years after their creation, many of these machines still remain active. Travelers exploring ancient ruins frequently encounter ruin guards, ruin hunters, and other automated weapons that continue to operate long after their creators disappeared. The existence of these machines is a clear reminder of how advanced Khaenri'ah once was. But technology was only part of the nation's achievements. The scholars of Khaenri'ah also made extraordinary breakthroughs in alchemy. One of the most famous alchemists in the kingdom's history was Rheindotter, often referred to by the title Gold. Rheindotter was known for her experiments in artificial life. Using advanced alchemical techniques, she succeeded in creating living beings from raw materials. These creations were not simple machines. They were fully functioning life forms. One of Rheindotter's most famous creations was Albedo. Albedo is a synthetic human created through alchemy rather than natural birth. Despite being artificial, he possesses intelligence, emotions, and the ability to learn and grow like any other person. This achievement alone demonstrates just how far Khaenri'ah's scientific knowledge had progressed. But Rheindotter's experiments did not stop with human-like creations. According to scattered historical records, she also created powerful monsters capable of devastating entire regions. Some of these creatures would later play a role in one of the most catastrophic events in Teyvat's history. The kingdom of Khaenri'ah continued to grow stronger with each passing generation. Its technology surpassed that of the surface nations. Its scholars uncovered deeper layers of knowledge about the structure of the world, and its people grew increasingly confident in their ability to shape their own destiny. But this independence may have been exactly what made Khaenri'ah dangerous. To the rulers of Celestia, the existence of a powerful nation that rejected divine authority was a serious problem. Every other civilization in Teyvat existed within the celestial system. The Archons governed their regions. Celestia stood at the top of the hierarchy. But Khaenri'ah operated entirely outside this structure. It was a nation that proved humans could thrive without the guidance of the gods. If its success continued, other nations might begin to question the authority of the Archons. The carefully maintained balance of the world could collapse. And there was another concern. Khaenri'ah's scholars were not afraid to investigate forbidden knowledge. Just like the ancient kingdom of King Dishret, they pursued truths that most civilizations avoided. Their research into alchemy, artificial life, and advanced technology pushed the boundaries of what humans were supposed to understand. Some historians believe that Khaenri'ah may even have uncovered secrets related to the structure of the world itself. Secrets connected to the artificial sky. Secrets that Celestia had worked for thousands of years to keep hidden. If that were true, then Khaenri'ah would not simply be a rebellious nation. It would be a direct threat to the celestial order. And history has shown that when civilizations challenge that order, the consequences are often devastating. As centuries passed, Khaenri'ah transformed from a hidden underground society into one of the most formidable civilizations in Teyvat. Its people had no Archon, no divine patron, yet their nation continued to grow stronger. This alone made Khaenri'ah an anomaly in the world's carefully maintained balance. Across the surface of Teyvat, every major civilization existed under the influence of a god. The 7 Archons guided their nations. Divine power shaped politics, culture, and philosophy. But in Khaenri'ah, humanity governed itself, and it did so remarkably well. The kingdom became a center of scientific discovery. Its scholars pushed the boundaries of alchemy, engineering, and metaphysics. They developed machines capable of autonomous operation. They created artificial life. They explored forms of energy and knowledge that even the Archons rarely studied. Over time, their inventions spread beyond the underground kingdom. Ruins across the world still contain mechanical constructs originally built by Khaenri'ah. These creations, commonly referred to as ruin machines, remain some of the most dangerous relics found in ancient sites. Ruin guards patrol abandoned battlefields. Ruin hunters soar through forgotten skies. Ruin graders stand like silent giants within crumbling ruins. Each of these machines serves as a reminder of the technological mastery once achieved by the people of Khaenri'ah. But technology alone did not define the kingdom. Khaenri'ah was also home to individuals whose influence would echo through the centuries. One of the most mysterious figures connected to the nation is Dainsleif. Dainsleif served as the captain of the royal guard of Khaenri'ah. Unlike many other characters in Teyvat's history, Dainsleif still walks the world today. Despite the destruction of his homeland centuries ago, he appears to be unaffected by the normal passage of time. His long life is connected to one of the most tragic consequences of Khaenri'ah's fall. A terrible curse placed upon its people. But before that catastrophe occurred, Dainsleif stood as one of the kingdom's most loyal defenders. He witnessed its rise. He saw its incredible achievements. And eventually, he would witness its destruction. Another influential figure tied to Khaenri'ah's legacy is Kia Alberich. Kia is a descendant of the royal bloodline of Khaenri'ah. Though he now lives in Mondstadt, his ancestry connects him directly to the fallen kingdom. His family once held important responsibilities within Khaenri'ah's royal court. Their role was to ensure that the legacy of the nation would survive, even if the kingdom itself was destroyed. This suggests that some of Khaenri'ah's leaders may have anticipated the danger they faced. They may have understood that their civilization was approaching a confrontation with forces far beyond their control. Because by the time Khaenri'ah reached the height of its power, the tension between the underground kingdom and the celestial authorities had grown impossible to ignore. From the perspective of Celestia, Khaenri'ah represented a dangerous precedent. A powerful civilization thriving without divine oversight. A society that proved humanity did not need the gods to survive. But there were even deeper concerns. The scholars of Khaenri'ah had begun experimenting with forces that were not native to Teyvat. Just as King Dishret once sought forbidden knowledge, Khaenri'ah's researchers pushed into realms of study that many believed should remain untouched. Among these experiments were the creations of Rheindotter, the alchemist known as Gold. Her work with artificial life had already produced remarkable results. But according to ancient records, some of her creations were far more dangerous than intended. Monstrous entities began appearing across the world. Creatures that seemed to defy the natural laws governing Teyvat. Some scholars believe that these creatures were early manifestations of the power that would later be associated with the Abyss. If this is true, then Khaenri'ah's experiments may have accidentally opened a gateway to forces beyond the world. For Celestia, this development would have been deeply alarming. A civilization that rejected divine authority was already dangerous. But a civilization experimenting with unknown cosmic powers posed an even greater threat. Eventually, the situation reached a breaking point. Approximately 500 years ago, the heavens responded. The punishment that followed would become one of the most devastating events in the history of Teyvat. The destruction of Khaenri'ah. An event known simply as the Cataclysm. 500 years ago, the world of Teyvat experienced a disaster so devastating that its effects are still felt today. Entire regions were scarred. Civilizations were shattered. And one of the most powerful nations ever created was wiped from existence. This event is known simply as the Cataclysm. At the center of the catastrophe was the underground kingdom of Khaenri'ah. For centuries, Khaenri'ah had grown in power through technology, alchemy, and human innovation. It had no Archon. It rejected divine authority. And its scholars continued pushing the boundaries of forbidden knowledge. Eventually, something went terribly wrong. Historical records from across Teyvat describe a sudden eruption of monstrous creatures spreading across the world. These creatures appeared without warning. They attacked cities, villages, and ancient ruins alike. Some were grotesque beasts twisted by unnatural energy. Others appeared to be corrupted life forms born from failed experiments. Many historians believe these monsters were connected to the work of the alchemist Rhine, also known as Gold. Her research into artificial life had already produced incredible creations. But according to ancient records, some of her later experiments may have spiraled out of control. The creatures unleashed during the Cataclysm seemed to defy the natural laws of the world. They spread rapidly across Teyvat, overwhelming cities and threatening entire civilizations. Faced with this growing disaster, the gods of the world were forced to respond. The 7 Archons and their armies mobilized to fight the spreading chaos. From Mondstadt to Liyue, and from Enkanomiya to Sumeru, divine forces clashed with the monstrous hordes. But the epicenter of the catastrophe remained Khaenri'ah itself. Deep beneath the surface of the continent, the once great kingdom had become the center of an uncontrollable disaster. At some point during this crisis, the heavenly authority of Celestia made a decisive move. The kingdom of Khaenri'ah was condemned. Celestia unleashed divine punishment upon the underground nation. The exact nature of this attack remains unclear. Ancient texts describe massive bursts of destructive energy raining down from the sky. Other accounts suggest that celestial forces descended directly upon the kingdom. Whatever the method, the result was absolute devastation. The civilization that had taken centuries to build was destroyed in a single catastrophic event. Cities collapsed. Infrastructure was annihilated. The advanced technologies that once defined the nation were buried beneath layers of rubble and ruin. But the destruction of Khaenri'ah was only the beginning of the tragedy. The people of the kingdom did not simply die. Instead, they were cursed. Survivors of the disaster were transformed into monstrous beings known as hilichurls. These creatures, now commonly encountered across Teyvat, were once human citizens of Khaenri'ah. Their bodies and minds were twisted by a supernatural curse that stripped away their humanity. Today, hilichurls wander the wilderness in scattered tribes. They build crude camps, speak in fragmented language, and attack travelers who enter their territory. Few people realize that these creatures were once members of a thriving civilization. But the curse did not affect all survivors in the same way. Some individuals from Khaenri'ah received a different form of punishment. Instead of transforming into monsters, they were cursed with immortality. These survivors became unable to die, forced to wander the world indefinitely while watching everything they once knew fade into history. One of the most famous victims of this curse is Dainsleif. Once the captain of the royal guard of Khaenri'ah, Dainsleif survived the destruction of his homeland. But he now carries the burden of eternal life. Unable to age or die, he travels across Teyvat as a witness to the consequences of the Cataclysm. And he is not alone. Other cursed survivors still exist in the world, though many remain hidden in the shadows. The destruction of Khaenri'ah sent shockwaves across the entire planet. The monstrous creatures released during the Cataclysm continued to spread across Teyvat. Entire regions faced destruction as the Archons and their allies struggled to contain the chaos. One of the most tragic losses occurred in Enkanomiya, where the original Electro Archon Makoto was killed during the battle against the spreading disaster. Her death would deeply affect her sister Ei, ultimately shaping the future of the nation. Even Zhongli of Liyue and Venti of Mondstadt were forced to confront the consequences of the disaster. For the Archons, the Cataclysm was not simply a war. It was a reminder of the fragile balance that governed the world. A single civilization's fall had nearly brought the entire planet into chaos. And although the immediate crisis was eventually contained, the deeper consequences of the Cataclysm had only just begun. When the flames of the Cataclysm finally died down, the world that remained was fundamentally different from the one that existed before. The kingdom of Khaenri'ah was gone. Its cities were reduced to buried ruins. Its people were either cursed, scattered, or erased from history. But the consequences of the Cataclysm extended far beyond the destruction of a single nation. Across Teyvat, the disaster left scars that would shape the next 500 years of history. One of the most immediate consequences was the spread of the cursed survivors. As the citizens of Khaenri'ah were transformed into hilichurls, they scattered across the world. These creatures now inhabit forests, mountains, and ancient ruins throughout Teyvat. To most people, they appear to be primitive monsters. They attack travelers. They construct crude camps. They chant strange phrases in an unfamiliar language. But behind those distorted forms lies a tragic truth. These beings were once ordinary humans. People with homes, families, and lives in the kingdom that was destroyed. Their transformation into hilichurls represents one of the cruelest aspects of the Cataclysm. The curse stripped away their humanity while leaving them trapped in a broken existence. Even worse, the curse appears to be irreversible. Generations have passed since the fall of Khaenri'ah, yet the hilichurls continue to exist across the world. Some scholars believe they are slowly deteriorating over time, their bodies weakening, their minds fading further into chaos. If that theory is correct, then the people of Khaenri'ah are doomed to slowly decay into oblivion. But not all survivors suffered this fate. Some individuals were given a different punishment. Instead of being transformed into monsters, they were cursed with immortality. These survivors remain human in appearance, but they cannot age or die. They wander the world endlessly, watching as centuries pass around them. One of the most well-known examples is Dainsleif. Once the captain of the royal guard of Khaenri'ah, Dainsleif survived the destruction of his homeland. Now he travels across Teyvat searching for answers and confronting the forces responsible for the Cataclysm. He carries the memories of a civilization that no longer exists, and he continues to hunt the creatures and entities that emerged from the disaster. Because although the Cataclysm officially ended centuries ago, the forces unleashed during that event never fully disappeared. Instead, they evolved into something even more dangerous. From the ruins of Khaenri'ah emerged a powerful organization known as the Abyss Order. The Abyss Order is composed primarily of cursed beings connected to the fallen kingdom. Many of its members were once citizens of Khaenri'ah. Others are creatures that emerged from the strange and hostile dimension known as the Abyss. Together, they now operate as a shadowy faction working behind the scenes to reshape the world. Unlike ordinary monsters, the Abyss Order possesses intelligence and strategy. Its members plan coordinated attacks. They manipulate ancient technologies. They search for relics connected to Khaenri'ah's lost knowledge. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about the Abyss Order concerns its leader. At the center of the organization stands a figure known as the Abyss Prince or Abyss Princess. This individual commands the forces of the Abyss and directs their operations across Teyvat. And according to the story of Genshin Impact, this leader is none other than the missing sibling of the Traveler. Before the Cataclysm occurred, the Traveler and their sibling arrived in Teyvat from another world. But when the disaster struck, the two were separated. While the Traveler was placed into a long period of slumber, their sibling awoke earlier and witnessed the destruction of Khaenri'ah firsthand. What they saw during that time changed them forever. Over the centuries that followed, the sibling eventually rose to lead the Abyss Order. From their perspective, the destruction of Khaenri'ah represents a grave injustice carried out by the heavenly powers ruling the world. And now, the Abyss Order seeks to challenge that authority. Their ultimate goal remains unclear, but their actions suggest a growing conflict between the forces of the Abyss and the celestial system that governs Teyvat. This hidden war continues to unfold beneath the surface of the modern world. Most ordinary people remain unaware of the true scale of the conflict. They see only fragments. Abyss mages appearing near ancient ruins. Strange monsters emerging from dark portals. Occasional battles between mysterious forces hidden far from civilization. But behind these scattered events lies a much larger struggle. A struggle that began with the destruction of Khaenri'ah. A struggle that may eventually determine the fate of the entire world. And at the center of that struggle stands the Traveler. If the heavens represent order in the world of Teyvat, then the Abyss represents its shadow. A force that exists beneath the surface of reality. A realm tied to corruption, forgotten knowledge, and the ruins of a destroyed civilization. Most people in Teyvat know very little about it. They hear rumors about strange mages appearing near ancient ruins. They see monsters emerge from dark portals deep within caves. But few understand the true scale of the power hidden behind these events. At the center of this mystery lies a faction known as the Abyss Order. The Abyss Order is not simply a group of monsters. It is an organized force with clear goals and a complex hierarchy. Its members operate in secret across the world, searching for ancient relics, manipulating powerful energies, and launching carefully planned attacks against both human nations and divine authorities. But what exactly is the Abyss? To answer that question, we must first understand that Teyvat is not the only realm connected to this world. Hidden beneath the fabric of reality exists another dimension, a dark and hostile plane commonly referred to as the Abyss. This realm appears to function according to very different laws than the surface world. Energy behaves unpredictably. Creatures born within the Abyss often possess strange and unstable forms. And the influence of the Abyss has a tendency to corrupt anything it touches. When abyssal energy enters Teyvat, it can twist living beings into monstrous shapes. It can distort environments. It can even interfere with elemental power. Many scholars believe that the creatures unleashed during the Cataclysm were connected to this dark dimension. If that theory is correct, then the destruction of Khaenri'ah may have involved forces far beyond the control of its people. But the Abyss is not simply a natural phenomenon. It is also home to an organized society. The Abyss Order itself appears to be structured around a clear chain of command. At the lower levels are the Abyss Mages. These powerful spellcasters serve as field operatives, carrying out missions across Teyvat. They are often encountered guarding ancient ruins or attempting to activate long-dormant technologies. Above them are more powerful entities such as Abyss Heralds and Abyss Lectors. These beings possess immense elemental abilities and act as commanders within the organization. Their presence often signals that the Abyss Order is pursuing something significant. But the most surprising aspect of the Abyss Order is its leadership. At the top of the organization stands a single ruler, a figure known as the Abyss Prince or Abyss Princess. This individual commands the forces of the Abyss and directs their long-term plans. And according to the story of Genshin Impact, this mysterious leader is none other than the sibling of the Traveler. When the Traveler first arrived in Teyvat, they were separated from their twin during the chaos surrounding the Cataclysm. The Traveler was sealed away in a long period of slumber. But their sibling awakened much earlier. During those years, the sibling witnessed the destruction of Khaenri'ah. They saw the punishment inflicted upon its people. They watched as an entire civilization was erased by the forces of Celestia. Whatever they experienced during that time changed them profoundly. By the time the Traveler awakens and begins exploring the world, their sibling has already become the leader of the Abyss Order. This revelation creates one of the central conflicts of the entire story. The Traveler seeks to reunite with their sibling, but the sibling now stands at the head of a powerful organization working against the celestial system that governs the world. Their motivations are complex. They do not appear to be driven by simple revenge or chaos. Instead, they claim to have learned the true nature of the world, a truth that the Traveler has yet to discover. According to the sibling, the current system ruling Teyvat is deeply flawed. The authority of Celestia is built upon secrets and suppressed history. The destruction of Khaenri'ah was not merely a punishment for reckless experimentation. It was part of a much larger pattern. A system designed to control the development of civilizations and prevent them from uncovering forbidden truths. From the siblings' perspective, the Abyss Order represents a resistance movement, a force dedicated to challenging the celestial order. Whether their methods are justified remains one of the most difficult questions in the story. Because while the Abyss Order claims to fight for justice, its actions often cause suffering across the world. Villages are attacked. Ancient powers are manipulated. Dangerous forces are unleashed in pursuit of its goals. This creates a moral dilemma that the Traveler must eventually confront. Is the Abyss truly the enemy? Or is it a reaction to something even more dangerous hidden within the heavens? As the Traveler continues exploring Teyvat, encounters with the Abyss Order become increasingly common. At first, these encounters seem like isolated incidents. A ruined temple guarded by Abyss Mages. A forgotten relic protected by strange monsters. A mysterious portal hidden deep within an ancient ruin. But over time, a pattern begins to emerge. The Abyss Order is not acting randomly. Every operation appears connected to a larger objective. They are searching for ancient technologies. They are investigating ruins connected to Khaenri'ah. and they are studying relics tied to the oldest mysteries of Teyvat. This pattern suggests that the Abyss Order is trying to recover the lost knowledge of the fallen kingdom. If Khaenri'ah was once the most technologically advanced civilization in the world, then its ruins may still contain secrets capable of reshaping the future. But recovering those secrets is only part of the Abyss Order's goal. The deeper motivation behind their actions appears to be ideological. The leader of the Abyss Order, the Traveler's sibling, believes that the current system governing the world is fundamentally unjust. According to them, the destruction of Khaenri'ah revealed the true nature of the celestial hierarchy, a system where the gods of Celestia decide which civilizations are allowed to exist. Throughout history, powerful societies have risen across Teyvat: the Selai civilization, the desert kingdom of King Deshret, the underground nation of Khaenri'ah. Each of these civilizations reached remarkable levels of advancement. Each began exploring knowledge that challenged the boundaries of the world, and each ultimately fell. From the siblings' perspective, this pattern is not a coincidence. It is a system, a cycle enforced by Celestia to maintain control over the development of civilization. If a society grows too powerful or begins uncovering dangerous truths, it is destroyed before it can challenge the celestial order. The Cataclysm may have been one of the most recent examples of this system in action, but it was not the first. And if nothing changes, it may not be the last. This belief lies at the heart of the Abyss Order's philosophy. They do not simply want revenge for the fall of Khaenri'ah. They want to break the system that allowed such destruction to occur. Their ultimate objective appears to be the overthrow of Celestia itself. If the Abyss Order succeeds, the entire structure governing Teyvat could collapse. The authority of the Archons might disappear. The divine hierarchy that has existed for thousands of years could be replaced by something entirely new. But achieving that goal will not be easy. Celestia still stands at the highest point in the world's power structure. Even the Archons, who rule entire nations, operate under its authority. Challenging Celestia means confronting forces that may be far older and more powerful than anything currently known. The Abyss Order has therefore spent centuries preparing. They study ancient ruins. They collect lost technologies. They experiment with powers connected to the Abyss itself. Each of these efforts may be part of a long-term strategy to challenge the heavens. But this conflict is not purely political. It is also deeply personal. At the center of the struggle stands the Traveler, the protagonist of Genshin Impact. Unlike the inhabitants of Teyvat, the Traveler did not originate in this world. They are what the lore refers to as a descender, a being who arrived from outside the established system. Because of this unique origin, the Traveler may be able to do something no one else in Teyvat can accomplish. They may be able to stand outside the celestial hierarchy. This is why the Traveler's sibling urges them to continue exploring the world, to witness its history, to learn the truth behind the rise and fall of civilizations. The sibling believes that once the Traveler understands the full story of Teyvat, they will eventually reach the same conclusion, that the world's current system must be broken. Whether the Traveler will ultimately agree remains uncertain. Throughout their journey, they form friendships with the people of every nation. They help defend cities. They protect civilizations that currently exist within the celestial system. To many of these people, the Archons are not tyrants. They are guardians, symbols of stability and protection. This creates a difficult conflict. The Traveler stands between two opposing visions for the future of the world. One side is represented by Celestia and the established order that governs Teyvat. The other is represented by the Abyss Order and the sibling who seeks to dismantle that order entirely. Both sides claim to be protecting the future of the world. Both sides believe their actions are necessary, and the Traveler may eventually be forced to choose between them. At the center of Teyvat's unfolding story stands a figure who does not belong to this world. A traveler from beyond the stars. A witness to civilizations rising and falling. A being whose arrival may ultimately change the fate of the entire planet. This figure is known simply as the Traveler, the protagonist of Genshin Impact. But the Traveler's story did not begin in Teyvat. Long before the events of the game, the Traveler and their twin journeyed between worlds. They were cosmic wanderers moving from one realm to another, observing different civilizations across the universe. Their travels eventually brought them to the world of Teyvat. But when they attempted to leave, something unexpected happened. As the twins prepared to depart, they were confronted by a mysterious figure. A powerful being often referred to as the unknown god. This entity accused them of attempting to escape the world. With overwhelming power, she stopped the twins from leaving. During the confrontation, the traveler and their sibling were separated. One twin was sealed away. The other was left to awaken in a changed world. This moment marks the beginning of the story player's experience. When the traveler awakens, centuries have passed. The disaster known as the Cataclysm has already reshaped the world. The kingdom of Khaenri'ah has been destroyed, and the traveler's sibling has vanished. With no clear answers, the traveler begins a journey across the nations of Teyvat in search of their lost twin. Early in this journey, the traveler encounters a mysterious floating companion known as Paimon. Paimon quickly becomes the traveler's guide and closest ally. Together, they begin exploring the nations governed by the 7 Archons. The first destination is Mondstadt, the nation of wind. Mondstadt is ruled by the ideal of freedom, inspired by the Anemo Archon Venti. But when the traveler arrives, the city is already facing a crisis. A corrupted dragon known as Storm Terror has begun attacking the region. With the help of local allies, the traveler eventually learns the dragon's true identity. Storm Terror is actually Dvalin, one of the ancient protectors of Mondstadt. Through cooperation with Venti and the Knights of Favonius, the traveler helps free Dvalin from the corruption affecting him. This first adventure establishes the traveler as a hero capable of influencing the fate of entire nations. But it also reveals something unusual. Unlike ordinary people in Teyvat, the traveler does not require a vision to control elemental power. Instead, they can resonate directly with the elemental energy of each region they visit. This ability allows them to wield multiple elements over the course of their journey, something no other known individual in Teyvat can do. From Mondstadt, the traveler continues their journey to the nation of contracts, the harbor city of Liyue. Here they encounter the Geo-Archon Zhongli, although his true identity is not immediately revealed. During their time in Liyue, the traveler becomes involved in a complex political crisis surrounding the apparent death of the Geo-Archon. The investigation eventually reveals that Zhongli himself orchestrated the event. After thousands of years ruling Liyue, he wished to step away from direct leadership and allow humanity to guide its own future. The traveler plays a key role in protecting the nation during this transition. Their actions once again demonstrate how their presence influences the course of history. But as the traveler continues moving from nation to nation, deeper mysteries begin to surface. In Inazuma, they encounter the rigid rule of the Electro-Archon Raiden, who seeks to freeze her nation in an unchanging state of eternity. In Sumeru, they uncover secrets about knowledge control, artificial dreams, and the manipulation of divine authority. Each new region reveals another piece of the world's hidden history, and slowly, the traveler begins learning more about their own role in the larger cosmic system. One of the most important revelations concerns a concept known as descenders. According to information discovered during the traveler's journey, certain beings in Teyvat's history have arrived from outside the world. These individuals are classified as descenders. Unlike ordinary inhabitants of Teyvat, descenders are not bound by the same cosmic rules. They exist outside the control of the system governing the world. The traveler is one of these beings, and that distinction may be far more important than it first appears. As the traveler's journey continues across Teyvat, one realization becomes increasingly clear. They are not simply a visitor. They are an anomaly within the world's cosmic structure. This realization emerges through the concept of descenders. According to records uncovered during the story of Genshin Impact, descenders are beings who originate from outside the world of Teyvat. Unlike ordinary inhabitants, they are not recorded within the world's natural system. Their existence does not follow the same rules governing the people, gods, and civilizations of Teyvat. In other words, descenders stand outside the cosmic order, and that makes them incredibly important. During investigations in Sumeru, scholars studying ancient knowledge reveal that the traveler is recognized as one of these descenders. This discovery explains several unusual aspects of the traveler's abilities. For example, Most individuals in Teyvat require a vision to control elemental power. These visions are gifts granted by the gods. They allow mortals to channel elemental energy in limited ways. But the traveler does not need a vision. Instead, they can resonate directly with the elemental energy present in each region they visit. This ability allows them to wield multiple elements over time, a feat that is otherwise considered impossible. This unusual trait suggests that the traveler interacts with the world differently than native inhabitants. Their connection to elemental power appears more direct, more fundamental, and possibly tied to forces older than the Archons themselves. As the traveler continues their journey, they eventually arrive in the Nation of Justice, the technologically advanced country of Fontaine. Fontaine is governed by the Hydro Archon and built around a society obsessed with law, judgment, and truth. Here, the traveler becomes involved in a series of trials that question the nature of justice itself. The events in Fontaine reveal yet another layer of Teyvat's hidden structure. The systems that govern the world are not as stable as they appear. Even the authority of the Archons can be challenged. And the deeper the traveler explores these nations, the more evidence emerges that the celestial order may be far more fragile than anyone realizes. After Fontaine, the traveler's path leads toward one of the least understood regions in the world, the fiery land of Natlan. Natlan is associated with the element of pyro and the concept of war. Very little is known about its culture compared to the other nations of Teyvat. But historical hints suggest that Natlan may hold important clues about ancient conflicts between gods and mortals. Some scholars believe that the traditions of Natlan preserve fragments of the oldest stories in the world. Stories that may connect to events long before the rise of the seven Archons. If those stories survive in Natlan's culture, they could reveal crucial information about the origins of the celestial system itself. But regardless of what the traveler discovers in Natlan, their journey is gradually leading them toward a larger confrontation. Because every nation they visit reveals another piece of the same puzzle. The destruction of Khaenri'ah, the mysterious authority of Celestia, the rebellion led by the Abyss Order, and the hidden truths behind the artificial sky of Teyvat. All of these mysteries connect to the same cosmic structure, a system that appears to control the rise and fall of civilizations. Throughout history, powerful societies have attempted to break free from this structure. The ancient Celestia civilization, the desert kingdom of King Deshret, the underground nation of Khaenri'ah. Each of these civilizations pursued knowledge that challenged the limits of the world, and each eventually collapsed. Whether through divine punishment, internal catastrophe, or mysterious disasters, their stories all ended in ruin. This pattern raises a troubling possibility. Perhaps Teyvat itself is part of a controlled system, a world designed to maintain balance through cycles of creation and destruction. If that is true, then breaking the system may require someone who exists outside it, someone who cannot be controlled by the rules governing the world, someone like the Traveler. As a descender, the Traveler may represent the only force capable of disrupting the cosmic structure maintained by Celestia. This possibility is why both sides of the conflict pay such close attention to the Traveler's actions. The Archons observe them with curiosity. The Abyss Order watches them with interest. And the Traveler's sibling continues to guide them toward discovering the truth. Because in the end, the Traveler's journey is not simply about reuniting with their lost twin. It is about uncovering the full history of the world, and deciding what the future of that world should become. The story of Teyvat is still unfolding. Ancient civilizations have risen and fallen. Gods have fought wars that reshaped the world. Entire nations have been erased from history. And hidden behind it all is a celestial authority that continues to watch from above. But now, something different has entered the world. A traveler from beyond the stars. A witness to its past. And possibly the one being capable of changing its future. Because if the sky above Teyvat is truly false, if the gods hide the truth about the world's creation, then one final question remains. What lies beyond the boundaries of Teyvat? And when the truth is finally revealed, will the traveler choose to protect this world, or tear down the system that created it? The answer has yet to be written,